Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. Um, so Trump just gave away the game like he always does. Just punked himself and Israel and all the people that support him and all these people who are beating the drums of Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. And Iran, slim dick response proves it, which I covered yesterday. Their pathetic response to getting bunker busted, right? They got fucking bunker busted. And so let's get into it here. I'm a little bit groggy, but
President Trump has just weighed in on Iran's attempt at retaliation for U.S. strikes on its nuclear facilities this past weekend. Trump, writing on Truth Social, quote, Iran has officially...
Okay, let me just read this. Iran has just officially responded to our obliteration of their nuclear facilities with a very weak response, which we expected, and have very effectively countered. There have been 14 missiles fired. 13 were knocked down, and one was set free because it was, in air quotes, because that's a military term, because it was headed in a non-threatening direction. I am pleased to report that no Americans were harmed and hardly any damage was done. Most importantly, they've gotten it all out of their system, in quotes. And there will hopefully be no further hate. The hate's gone. The hate's out of their system. It's just gone. They got rid of their hate. I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice, which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured. Perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace and harmony in the region, and I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Thank you for your attention to this matter. It's just such a weird thing to tweet in this bullshit Truth Social things that he does. And so he's given away the game here. And I want to go through the mocking part of the tweet, because I'm into mocking. I mean, I do it here regularly, so I'm not going to, but in this case, like, it's just such a dick move on his part. But this is, a major admission from him. And all the stuff we've heard from Israel over the years, all the stuff we've heard from the stupid-ass neocons and the Zionists and, all these people, is no longer valid because of what's just happened here. So Israel bombed the shit out of Iran, and they fired back with some limp dick missiles, some of them getting through. The death count and the damage done is disproportional. And then America comes in and bunker busts the shit out of the place. America, who's been, demonizing Iran in various ways and wrecked Iran so many years ago. And, all this stuff with death to America, Iran gives the most limp dick response it possibly could by sending some, whatever missiles that could easily be intercepted with fair warning at the U.S. just to save a modicum of face, that they have to do something in response, right? And Trump's calling them out on it, which means this is, the fundamental reason that they could say that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon has been obliterated. The only reason they would say Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon is that they don't have any self-preservation. Their self-preservation isn't a thing that exists in them. That they don't care how many of their own people die. And they don't care if they themselves die, as long as they bring death to America or death to Israel. That there's no sense of that they want to live and survive and thrive or any of these things. They're just hateful people that only care about one thing, and that's bringing death to America and Israel. And if they get a nuclear bomb, they'll use it, and they don't care that their country will be obliterated. Because if Iran completed a nuclear bomb and dropped it on Israel, America would destroy them, the whole fucking country. whether it be send a nuclear missile to hit them or whatever it was, Iran would no longer exist, right? And 93 million people in the whole region, whatever it was that they did, whatever, they probably want to save resources, but the country and the government and all that would be gone. The government would be done, at least. The people running the country would all be killed, and it would be over. And, it would be supported by the UN and all that stuff, right? And so the only reason that you would say Iran can't have a nuclear bomb is what Trump said, which is they're always saying death to America. If they got a nuclear bomb, they would totally use it. But we already knew this because they don't complete a nuclear bomb ever. If they're only 2 weeks away, why are they not completing the nuclear bomb? Because they know if they complete it, they're fucked. And they're not going to use it anyway. And so they have self-preservation. Their whole life doesn't exist around death to Israel and death to America. These are just fucking straw man arguments that have been made over the years. And so they could have a nuclear bomb just like everybody else, because the whole reason that you can get to have a nuclear bomb is you're not fucking stupid enough to use it, because if you use it, it's going to be used on you, right? Like, just like Israel was always wanting to take down Iran, but as long as Iran had missiles, they would be, that could get into Israel, like I showed you yesterday with that clip from that guy who said after October 7th they were able to take down the missiles. And so all those missiles that were outside the border of Israel, that would have caused tens of thousands of deaths in Israel. Because if Iran completed a nuclear bomb, then you're dealing with, you can't just punk somebody who has a nuclear bomb. You just can't do what Israel just did to them, right? Israel just can't go in and just drop fucking bombs on them and, undermine them and all the rest of these things, right? The nuclear power, whatever, you're dealing with somebody who can destroy your country. And, these nuclear bombs and these nuclear power plants, the nuclear particles go all around the fucking world, right? The stuff that happened in Chernobyl was found in Europe. There's some British woman who's documented this. This is like her passion at how bad Chernobyl fucked the whole region. Nuclear particles, smoke from, it was in New Mexico, and there's a fire in Houston, and the smoke was covering the sky in New Mexico. There's some big forest fire, like these, you're breathing other people's air, like the air circulates, and you're getting air from somebody else, and that's why when you pollute, and that's why when you drop nuclear weapons, or even like with the ocean, all that fucking radiation that's in the ocean, Fukushima, shows up in California, and in the fish in California that migrate and things. And so, when you do these kind of environmental disasters, they fuck everybody. And you drop a nuclear bomb, it's coming back around to you and certainly the neighbors in the neighboring area. It's going to contaminate waterways and gets into the earth, deep, like the springs and the things, the aquifers. And so, this is, it just shows you that Iran having a nuclear weapon isn't really anything. Like, because they don't even really, maybe they want one just because they don't want to get fucking bullied and punked all the time, because it's a deterrent. It's like, you can't push me around because I also have one, right? If you try to bully me, I can drop this thing on you. And so, but that's only when he goes scorched earth. It's the threat of having nuclear weapons, because, even Trump, as fucking much of a whiny little bitch he is, and a little immature little fuck, as much as Trump is, that, he took some time to drop these, megaton or these bunker buster bombs on Iran, right? Because, he's cautious about war in ways that he isn't cautious about anything else. Talks a big game, but he's kind of a puss, which is a good thing. I'm glad that he's not all, he's not as warlike. Because if he was impulsive like that, he just started, we'd be at war with Canada and Denmark right now. If Trump was more of a, if he was more than just a blowhard, if he was just more of a talker, like he does take it seriously, or at least people around him do, because like he might say impulsive shit and they're stopping him. But like there's some sense of, moderation and, like just maturity in terms of like doing some of the military actions. as opposed to the previous administrations, which were just doing things all the time, right? So, you know, but this thing where he mocks them and let him have some fucking dignity, right? Because Iran hasn't. I mean, they did give fair warning, and they're just doing this to save face. And Trump, like, Iran has officially responded to our obliteration of nuclear facilities with a very weak response, which we expected, and have very effectively countered. There have been 14 missiles. 13 of these fucking limp dick missiles were knocked out of the sky, and one was set free because it headed to a non-threatening direction. That has nothing to do with you fucking, I mean, it has much to do with him as it has to do with me or you or any of these people where we've, I mean, if you're in the military, sure, if you're part of the military industrial complex, but it's nothing to brag about. It's nothing to brag about that you spend half of your budget, America, I'm not talking about Trump here, America, that we spend half of our budget on the military. It's a fucked up thing. If you, let's say you made $100,000 a year and you spent 50,000 of it on weapons, you would be considered an insane person. If you spend half your income on, things to defend your house, guns and, whatever it is, weapons of all, I mean, just every year, like not just one fucking year, every year, like security systems and, like you spend half of your income on things to protect yourself and your family or aggressive things or whatever it is. And you would amass this, and every year you're amassing thousands of dollars of this kind of shit, you'd be considered a crazy person, right? Like if you spend, half your money on porn or half your money on, any of those things, you'd consider a crazy person, or drugs or alcohol or whatever it is, whatever deviant thing it is. And so you've been paranoid fuck, right? It's a inappropriate amount of money to spend on anything. In America, we spend more than half of our budget on military stuff. And so it's crazy. Like if you look at I've showed you the charts and the wheel. And so it's nothing to be proud of. Like there's a reason we're Europe's army. That's why we have the income that we do, the world reserve currency, because Europe was like, hey, we're sick of fighting. Europe, they're so warlike. All the shit that Great Britain did, and Spain and France and these countries, all of them, were so warlike for a while. The Vikings, the people now. I know so many people in Denmark from my meditation, and they're like, really passive, nice people. They used to be like these Vikings that would go in and just raiding was a part of their culture. Raiding and taking shit from people and abusing them was part of their culture. They would just go in there bigger and stronger, and they were just, they had better military techniques, and they would go raid other countries in Europe like all the time, and other. I mean, there was a whole thing, right? They were very warlike, and dying in battle, going to Valhalla. If you watch any of these like Viking shows that are on Netflix and things, it was a whole like culture. It was like a war culture, and now they're like the most passive people. These, they don't want war anymore. They've like matured out of that. Like the Attila the Hun and or the Genghis Khan and these people. Those people there in the Tibet, those areas, these Mongols, they're all pacified now. They used to be very warlike. So you had Rome and, Greece and these countries, and, they all had their turn at these empires, and, they got a taste of like they just gave up, they got soft. They, the spoils of war, the spoils of colonialism, and these countries and these people who are very warlike, they were tired of these things, and people weren't motivated anymore to go and conquer, and, they get pacified, like what's happened now with America. And it's the like pussification of the country, and I'm not saying that in a way that's, it's a good thing. Like it's bad to be warlike and aggressive and invasive of other people and, those things. But Europe was like, well, here's America with all these immigrants who are poor and desperate, and then we had all this war culture here. And so it's not something to brag about. Like it's nothing to do with Trump. Trump just happens to be president of a country that has the number one military. and he's mocking these people in a way that's disrespectful because they don't have a chance, right? Because we've armed Israel. It's just not something to be proud of. Like, we've this contentious area in the Middle East, and we've tipped the scales to this one country that's beating the shit out of all their neighbors because they know that they have this militaristic country in America to back them. And so I am pleased to report that no Americans were harmed and hardly any damage done. Most importantly, they've got it out of their system, and there will be hopefully no further hate. Like, there's a beef between Jews and Muslims, and the Muslims are, they don't get along. There's no way for me to qualify a historical 3,000-year-old beef and find, they both have their reasons. There's stuff out there where some of these famous people, there used to be a video about this, about all the countries that have had issues with their Jewish population. And it wasn't just because they felt like they killed Jesus, because some of the people weren't Christian. And, there's things that they do, economic things or whatever, like you see. I always say, because there's a lot of people that hate Jews, and I'm like, yeah, well, are you going to give up all the inventions and all the things that Jews have brought into the world, right? There's good and bad in every culture. And so there's a lot of things that the Jewish community that has invented or created, stand-up comedy, for example, or something like that, right? Vaudeville and all that stuff. And so, you have to look at the whole, everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. And in all these cultures, they've contributed things that we use every day, whether it be inventions or cultural things. Like, talk about India. India discovered the soul, right? Like, India's a pit in various ways, but they're ancient culture, and when they dominated the world, and not an American-type dominated world, but they were the number one country. They brought so much into the world, and spiritually, the discovery of the Atman, the soul, was, one of those primary things. But in all that, right, there's this beef between a 3,000-year-old beef between the sons of Abraham, right? That Abraham, and I don't know if I'll get all the names right. I could look it up, but it's still young. It's still early in the day for that kind of shit. But there was it Jacob? What am I looking at here? The sons of Abraham. Abraham didn't have a son, and so he was married to this woman who was Sarah, and they didn't think she could have any more kids. So he raped his maid, or whatever you want to call it, or slave, basically. And her name was Hagar, and she gave birth to Ishmael. And then some years later, his wife Sarah had a son named Isaac. And so there was, Isaac was Jewish and Ishmael was Arab, and would later become whatever, Muslim or whatever, Islam, whatever that was created. And so all that division happened between these two groups of people, the Isaac and Ishmael. This was the original beef. And, it's kind of fucked up story because there's so many fucked up stories in the Old Testament, in the Jewish Bible. But in all that, right, there's this beef. And the hatred is, 3,000 years of hate. That's like so many generations of beef between the Jews and the Muslims. That's some serious beefing, right? 3,000 years. And Trump thinks Trump says, and there hopefully will be no further hate, right? No more hate? Okay. They got out of their system. There's 9 limp dick missiles they fired at Qatar as a Muslim neighbor, in a non-critical base in the Middle East, U.S. base. Now the hate is out of their system. Okay, let's move on. Now we can all just get along. What the fuck are you talking about? I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice. This is totally mocking them, which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured. And so, you don't call them out on that. You just, I mean, you're putting them in a position, if this message gets back to their people, that Iran almost has to respond again because you've just, they were doing something just to save a little face, and you're completely taking their face and mushing it into the ground like a bully who's just beating the shit out of some kid that's half his age or whatever. And, the kid has no chance against it. And the kid's trying to save some dignity, and you're taking his face and rub it in dog shit or something. Like fucking, which would be funny because it's so not presidential. Like in his first term, this might be funny. But given the context of all this other stuff, don't rub Iran's face in dog shit, Trump. You're fucking, especially since you're just a big fat fucking loser that didn't do shit other than run companies into the ground and grift and con people out of their money. Perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace and harmony in the region. I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same. Thank you for the attention to this matter. And then his stupid signature. So there's a lot more to go with this. But now we know. Like, this is important because a lot of stuff is speculation, right? Like, what do I know about Iran? Like, I know some of the history and I know some of the people. And I was very impressed by the people I met who do meditation. But the ones who do meditation, the people who can do Saj Marg, to me, are the cream of the crop. And that doesn't mean they're not assholes, because a lot of them are, including myself. Like, it doesn't mean that they're not, arrogant or, any number of things, right? Like, it means that they have the capability to connect to the divinity within them and have some spiritual maturity where they crave that. In fact, I don't get along with a lot of the people that do it, but I don't get along, it's not like I'm a people person. But, the Danish people and the people from Iran are some of the best people there. Like some of the people that I really, thought were great. And at least the ones I met. But, this, I don't know that much about it, right? Like nobody does. Like we're just, whatever, we trying to fish out the truth for a sea full of lies on the internet, whatever it is. And so I can't say exactly, and I don't have any respect for the Iranian government. So what do I know that if they did get a nuclear weapon, they wouldn't just use it? But we can tell that they're not suicidal. And that's the whole idea, that Muslims are so filled with hate that they'll do suicidal things. But we see over and over again, this is just a saving face type situation with America. And so, there's nothing there, right? Like, it's silly. And Trump just admitted it, that Iran has self-preservation and they're not really a threat because they know when they're going. In fact, there's so many times that we've tried to push Iran into war. The neocons kept on wanting to do it. The neocons had a hard-on for Iran and wanted to push them into war, and they just wouldn't go, right? Like they know that they're going to, and people know, and this goes to the whole idea of the Hamas is willing to sacrifice all the Palestinian people and give Israel the right and the victim consciousness to come in and beat the shit out of all the people in Palestine because of what they did on October 7th. It doesn't make any sense, right? Like, it's bullshit stuff. It's false flag stuff because, people have self-preservation. Crazy people that are suicidal, they don't last very long in government, right? They can't. Like, they just, they burn out. They're self-destructive. People will always find a way to sabotage their own success. And so, greedy people, they could be horrible people that are, scared of, death for themselves because they're hedonistic, and they can get other people to do suicidal things or whatever. They can con other people into doing that. But the leaders themselves in all these countries have some sense of self-preservation. They love life, and they want to live, and they want to enjoy their spoils or whatever it is, right? And that's evident here with this, this thing. All right, let's move to this second thing that just came up this morning. So, just to recap what I was saying there, that you can always tell people's real, true intentions by their actions. And sometimes their actions are, not a display of their inner nature. Like, we all have a divine nature. And sometimes we don't, most times the majority of people never even get a whiff of that, of their divine nature, that they have divinity within them. And they have a soul. But there's times that you see somebody's soul, and it might be someone who's a complete asshole, but you see like there's a little bit of love. Like when my dad, who was, just a low functioning piece of shit, narcissistic, loser, who wasn't, at all a superficial person, very scared and very, whatever. And when I fell off a zip line and was knocked unconscious and I woke up in the hospital, it was like the only time I felt like he loved me. Like I was 14 years old. Like I didn't register it, but I was like, well, Jesus Christ, what are you doing? You're so all concerned. Like I woke up and he was like freaked out, right? Like he wasn't like he'd penetrated to a deeper level. People, you see this at weddings and the birth of a child or something where somebody displays a deeper feeling inside of themselves that oftentimes they're not in contact with, right? And so there's things like that. But in terms of people's egos and who they are as people, you can see with Trump, he doesn't take these things seriously, which we have multiple people talking about this. And he also had this tweet about, which we'll get to in a moment. I'm covering this. I'm jumping ahead now, where he thought there was going to be a brokered peace. This thing that he said on Truth Social, and now he's pissed off. But we now know that Iran isn't self-destructive, and we've known that for years because they've backed away. America's been trying to bait them into war for years. But anyways, so is Israel. And so when we know how Israel is, as soon as Israel had an opportunity, and Trump presidency and America just dwindling power and control over the world, they went for it. And these are aggressive acts. Invading Gaza, killing the leader of Syria, bombing the shit out of Iran, and bombing all these proxy people in various other countries. And so this is Israel completely going for it. And the idea that they're defending themselves. The Israeli Defense Force, the IDF. It's not defensive, it's aggressive.
Welcome back to Morning Joe. It's Tuesday, June 24th. Jonathan Lemire and Susan Page are still with us. Donald Trump walking to Air Force One as he plans his trip to The Hague in the Netherlands for NATO summit, where most of the NATO countries
was he carrying a MAGA hat?
have pledged, are going to pledge that they'll be spending 5% of their GDP on military expenditures, obviously something that Donald Trump has been pursuing for a very long time. But Jonathan,
5%, not 50%.
Here, the president holding a press avail before leaving the White House as he was going to the helicopter, Marine One, and
I think it says USA on it.
Angry with Israel, very angry with Iran. Saying they didn't know what the F they were doing. According to reports, we're getting the video fed into us right now. But take us through it. He expects the ceasefire to hold and is not pleased that it's not.
There's a tweet or truth in all cap letters coming.
Few minutes. As we discussed earlier in the show, the ceasefire was agreed to, President Trump trumpeting it, but these things are messy. It didn't end precisely at the time.
Takes a while.
Yeah, it does. It often does. And apparently a missile from Iran did get through, landed in Israel. There have been some casualties, a couple of fatalities, and Israel's now publicly saying they're going to hit back with full force. And that is what has really agitated President Trump this morning. We just showed you video. He did not talk to reporters at Joint Base Andrews, but he did a few minutes prior while leaving the White House, getting on Marine One as he heads to NATO. Pool reports indicate a very angry President Trump, as you says, criticizing both countries, Israel and Iran, saying, quote, they've been fighting for so long and so hard, they don't know what the F they're doing. He did not abbreviate that. And he also took to Truth Social right around the same time an all caps message squarely.
Donald Trump's pretty angry. I dropped the bunker buster and it didn't solve my bunker buster magic bombs of peace. My bunker buster magic bombs of peace didn't solve the 3,000-year-old beef with Israel and Iran and Jews and Muslims. I don't understand. I dropped these peace bombs, these giant peace bombs on.
Israel, saying, Israel, do not drop those bombs. If you do, it is a major violation. Bring your pilots home now. Donald J. Trump,
Lord.
President of the United States. So he really is hoping this ceasefire holds. It is not, at least just yet. And we have seen, Joe, about as angry, I'm told there, about as angry as President Trump has been in public in a long time this morning.
Here we go.
Bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
No, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They dropped those peace bombs and I don't understand what's happening. Absolutely, a fucking worthless piece of shit, this guy. It's hilarious. And when we get sucked into this thing, because he's not going to say fuck you to Israel. He can't. And Israel knows it. Israel's got him by, like he's fucking Netanyahu's got him by the fucking balls, and they're going to just keep on doing it. And they know that America will back him no matter what. And because they have, leverage over the guy. I mean, in various ways. And so Israel just bombed the shit out of Iran because they're the aggressor. And they're the ones that are fucking, started this thing. And they can say that they've been, they've had all these proxy wars and all these people. But Israel has been aggressive for years and has pissed everybody off, despite the, on top of 3,000 years of beefing between these two religions. And the religions just both suck. The thing about it is, all three of these religions suck drastically. They're the worst religions. And they're all connected. They're all intertwined. They're all coming from the same part of the world. They're all warlike. Think about all the wars that have come out of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And, they're religious wars. The crusades that the Christians did, the stuff in the Old Testament where the Jews were supposedly ordered by God, in air quotes, to go kill the Philistines and the Canaanites and all that fucking bullshit, right? And they were very, very warlike people. And the Muslims have just been nothing but warlike with all the other groups. The Muslims have fought every fucking other religion. Of course, the Christians invaded the Muslims, but the Muslims have got beef with the Hindus and with each other. They have the Shiite and the Sunni, two different sects of the religion. So all these religions bite, right? They're all bad religions because they're violent and they misrepresent what God's all about, and they're just shitty. Like, they're just materialistic. And there's, in Islam, there is the Sufis, which are very spiritual people. And those worldly dervishes are amazing. There are spiritual people in every religion. There are really saintly people that connect to God despite the lowbrow. There's a remedial, like everything else. There's like the stuff for the remedial fucking, the dumbasses, the dumb fucks, and then there's stuff for people who are, want to go to a higher level. And so there's a spiritual thread in every religion. And that's what needs to be capitalized. That's why I always talk about only spirituality will save this world. That's the only thing. It makes people into saints. People who are willing to be saints. Anybody can be a saint. Anybody can do work for God. Not in some bullshit way where you pray for God to make you great. You pray to God to solve your problems. When people want to be prayed for, and it's just because they have some problem they want solved, right? There was that great story about there's the manifestation of Vishnu's ego and his higher consciousness, Nara and Narayana. Nara is the ego and Narayana is the soul of Vishnu, and they're always going around observing shit on planet Earth. And Nara's always asking Narayana like questions and things. And so these two people are praying, and Narayana comes down to answer their prayers. And there's one guy, he's a piece of shit emperor who's conquered all kinds of lands. And he's praying to God to give him more of the same. And Narayana grants him his wish. Like he's trying to conquer some land and it's not going his way, so, in some war. And Narayana helps him win. And then there's some guy out in the middle of the woods, and the guy only has a cow. Like he's a saint. He's a spiritual person. And he only has a cow, and the cow's sick. And he's praying to God to heal the cow, and Narayana kills the cow. And Nara's like, what the fuck, right? You gave this asshole emperor a victory when the guy's just a piece of shit. And there's this guy who's a saint, all these guys a cow, and you kill the cow. This doesn't make any fucking sense. And Narayana goes, well, that emperor's not going to come to God for many years. And he's got to live this life and, have this experience just to get over it so he can eventually become spiritual. But the only thing between the saint and God, a total dependence on God, was the cow. It was the only thing blocking his, idea that he's dependent on God and not, some materialistic thing. And so the death of the cow made this saint have just total dependence on God. And so, there's that. I don't even know where I was going. I forgot. I went back and looked at it. I was talking about prayer. The right way to pray would be to accept everything that God gives to you. And, you ask it for the strength to do God's will and do God's things. But mostly prayer is begging. People want something out of the material life. They want God to fix something. They want God to heal something. They want God to give them something. They want God to remove something. They want God to stop something from happening. Usually prayers are when people have, they're either dying or someone in the family's dying and they're in a crisis. Very seldom do people go to God and say, what do you want? What do you want me to do? What's my purpose? What am I here for? These things. Praying to God to give the answers to do more godly work. And that's just a matter of effort. I dabble in it. I mean, I could be better, but I do it and have done it occasionally, But, even that's, kind of obnoxious or just because I know it works and I know there's a purpose. I mean, it's my overall stuff is the deeper stuff and the more important stuff, it's there. And so, even when I do this every day, that's a part of it. This idea that I'm doing what God wants me to do. And I'm willing to do what God wants me to do. But, it just takes a little bit of commitment for people. It's not it's not based in, you need talent for anything, but talent can be created. Like if you don't have talent in this life, if you commit to doing the work, you'll have talent in next life, right? Talent is only the cultivation of some skaras in the past. So if you've been a godly, devotional person in the past life, then you have that in you. And so you have an advantage. But in this life, it takes effort and commitment. And you had effort and commitment in a past life, but what does that do in this life, right? And if you don't have that in a past life, you still can cultivate that, right? And, if your life's going great or, you don't come across it, but when you're facing something like we're facing now collectively, and, as you get older and you're facing your own death, then it's time to maybe think about it, right? Like that would be a good time. There's times in your life where the opportunity to be a little bit more service-oriented and do a little bit more for God is there. And, you have to break free from your bullshit religion, too, because that's a part of it, because it's giving you bad info, and it's not, it's getting rid of, it's blocking your connection to the divinity within you. But anyways, in terms of that story, you have the one guy who's got one thing he's dependent on, which is the cow, and the other guy who's just got many more lives before he makes that realization that you're not here for power, wealth, and enjoyment. You're here for some other purpose. But anyways, let's go on to this. Trump wrote this tweet or truth here. So this is why Trump is completely pissed off. Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions. For 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start a ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start a ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful. On the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will, I would like to congratulate both countries of Israel and Iran on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel, God bless Iran, God bless the Middle East, God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world. Fuck you, you piece of shit. Right? I don't like saying God bless. I know it's a very common saying, and I understand what's the intention behind it. But it sounds like you're telling God to bless something, right? Like you can bless something, you can approve something. I don't know if bless is the right word. People go to the masters of in India, can you bless me, and this stuff. And you have to. I mean, if you're doing what you should be doing, there's no need for blessings. But saying God bless, it's like you're saying, hey, God bless somebody. You bless, God bless. Like Trump saying, God bless Israel, God bless Iran. Well, no, I mean, are you asking God to bless them? Is God gonna fucking bless them? Because I don't, why would God be interested in doing any of this bullshit? These are bullshit religions that take people away from God. These religions act as a barrier between people and God. Why the fuck would he bless them, right? You can bless yourself by submitting to the divinity within you, which none of these motherfuckers are doing, other than that they're acting out God's work by destroying the global system that has to come down, like just in a way that they're not doing it intentionally. So there's all that shit, right? But this idea that Trump dropped these bunker buster bombs of peace and love and harmony, and somehow by kicking the shit out of Iran, by bombing the shit out of their country, that they are, asking them to be peaceful, when Iran was trying to be peaceful the whole fucking time, right? I mean, whatever they were doing with proxy wars with these so-called terrorist groups that may or may not be handled by Iran, or they could be false flag groups. Like we know Hamas is a Israeli asset based on everything they've done. And this is, there's all these other things going on here. Economic and geopolitical, and the rail system that's going through to China and all this stuff that could undermine the petrodollar and all. We don't know what, there's all these, there's all these different aspects of the geopolitical, things that are going on and the rest of the stuff here that, that they're not talking about. But for Trump to think that this was over because he dropped those bombs and he's bringing peace, and that Israel isn't going to be more aggressive. Iran didn't want war from the beginning, so you got to get rid of the aggressor. And that's been America's problem, because Israel has always been the aggressor in the region. They've always been the one that's always started these wars, the 6-Day War and these other wars. They started all that shit. They started this one, they started those. And so if you're going to deal with the aggressor, then you deal with the aggressor. And now Trump's all pissed off because his bunker buster bombs of peace didn't do their job, and now there's still fucking beef going on there. Okay, so I want to go back to this thing right here, right? This is a different video, but same press conference thing.
That Iran violated the peace agreement and the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before.
Wait, Israel dropped their load? That's not why I'm covering this again.
The biggest load that we've seen.
It's the biggest load. It's splattered all over fucking Iran.
Happy with Israel. When I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because the one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand
They don't know what the fuck they're doing.
that?
You understand that? They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Working that mullet there. There's only one person that doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, and it's this guy, right? And to think that he was going to drop these peace bombs, these fucking bunker buster peace bombs, and put a hurting on Iran's nuclear capabilities to make a nuclear bomb, and Israel would be satisfied with that. Like, he doesn't understand what's going on. Like, he clearly doesn't. That Israel's the aggressor, that they want total domination over that region of the world, and they're going to go for it while they have Trump in office, especially these first 2 years before it's, the House and the Senate are flipped on Trump, and then he doesn't have the kind of power he has now, especially after all this bad shit with the economy and stuff starts going. That Israel has this window, this brief window where they have the victim consciousness from their false flag October 7th thing and all this other stuff that they have going for them, and that they are going for it. They're going for all the things they've wanted to do for years and expect Trump to back them and greenlight everything. And, and whatever people that are going to work on him that are connected to that is whatever that is. But the real issue here is that Trump is not thoughtful. And all of us in the truth community, people who want to know a little bit more. And it depends on each person. And it depends on which things in their life they're willing to confront. Some people will be able to confront, like the worst kind of truthers are ones who are Republican or liberal, and they don't want to confront their own political party or their own belief system. And so they're just basically binary fucks who pretend to be truthers and use words like wake up and woke and shit like that, but they're not really anything. And then the other kind of truthers are willing to look at the political issues, the left-right paradigm, but aren't willing to look at their healthcare system or their, religion, or more often their religion, or something like that. Like, it's everything. Like, everything that you've been taught is riddled with lies and deception and whatever it might be. And so, but anybody who's willing to, suffer some pain, suffer some anxiety, suffer some whatever the effects of hearing the truth are, because there are side effects, right? It's painful, and it's much easier to take the blue pill and go back into the Matrix like that Cypher character in the Matrix movie. But you guys have all dealt with somebody in your life where you have more information, and you go to talk to them, and they just shut you down, and they just want to believe in the official story, and they find some way of demeaning your worldview because they can't fucking handle the truth, right? And Trump's one of those people. He doesn't want to even know about his job. Like, handle it. Like, he doesn't want to know. He just tells people to do something about it. He doesn't ever understand the problem completely, and he doesn't understand the solution either. And so, like, in this case, he thinks he can, all right, this is about nuclear weapons. Like, he believes that shit. And if we just get rid of that facility, then Iran and Israel can go back to having peace and we can just have a deal. But, Iran is obviously conceding something and realizes they're desperate because their regime is under complete threat. Trump is not facing any real threat to his presidency because of this. Israel's not, Netanyahu's not facing any sort of a threat, but they have some timing issues here where they have to go for it. But Iran is, the Iranian regime is a shitty fucking government that nobody in the country likes, and everybody in the world is against. And their time is limited. Like, it's not going to last much longer. They had civil unrest before all this bullshit started, and now they're teetering on a fucking any moment their government could be overrun. There's they only have like 15% approval, and those people are probably all just kiss asses and people who don't want us to speak out or whatever because they they're connected to some power. And so the country is most of the people are very westernized, and they want to go back to the way it was under Mossadegh. And so Iran is totally wanting peace because of that. because they can't have it. They can't have this go on much longer because they're already suffering, and they're already losing control of their country. And Israel might bomb and kill their leadership and whatever. They have no defenses, air defense left, and so Israel can come in and do whatever the fuck they want, right? And so Trump should know all that shit, that Iran is motivated and Israel's not. And he said this shit, and he said this thing, like, who don't know what the fuck they're doing, but you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Like, you're oblivious to reality, right? Like, he flirts with truther narratives, but it likes QB stuff and whatever, things that suit him for the moment. But he's not a truth seeker. And that's 100% why his problem is, because presidents have to at least understand the official story, and he doesn't. He doesn't even understand the official story, never mind the truther story, the other narratives, or a deeper level story. He gets the bare basic information. And remember, he when that thing happened, when Pete Hegseth leaked all that information to a very liberal reporter that was included in that fucking that chat group that they made on whatever that app is. Don't tell me, don't care, don't need to know. Signal, and he said the guy probably left because he was bored, right? This guy's included in a chat about, they're dropping payloads of weapons. He's got this golden ticket where he's going to be on TV shows for like a week, and everyone's going to pay attention to his, his failing fucking website, right? And, and he's hyper liberal and he's anti-Trump. So this is like a great moment for him, right? And people said he's Mossad, that's why he was included, but who the fuck knows? But either way, he's got this moment, like this golden ticket, and he checks out of the group because he's kind of scared and whatever reason he gave. But it wasn't because he was bored, but Trump was showing what he is. He's bored when they're telling him stuff like that. Like when he's hearing about all this fucking technical jargon and this stuff, he's like, this is boring. I wish I didn't have to fucking read all this stuff. Can someone just explain it to me and fucking breathe as quickly as possible? Because he's bored. He's not curious. He's not thoughtful. He's not introspective. He's just, he likes the big moments of, rallies and things. He doesn't like to govern. Governing is boring. He likes these big things that happen, right, where he gets attention. But governing and doing the governing stuff is boring. Like, he's maybe not as bored with business, but he certainly isn't somebody who's, who's one of these political wonks and, people in terms of business even, that's really like a nerd. He's not nerdy. He's not somebody who knows a lot of things. He knows superficial stuff. And so he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. So this is Tammy Bruce. She is the State Department spokesperson and a conservative radio host commentator. Now, I don't know if this has been faked. I should check it, but I'll do it after I make this clip because I already ended it. But this is what she says here.
The pride of being able to be here and do work that facilitates making things better for people, and in the greatest country on earth, next to Israel.
Next to Israel? What the fuck? Did you just say that shit?
Greatest country on earth, next to Israel. It's an honor to be able to make a difference and to be able to speak in this regard with an administration that I love so much and that I feel genuinely represented by.
Wow. So again, I don't like any of that. I want to do a whole thing on pride, and I'll do that maybe in the next video. I was going to do it today, but I just jumped right into this stuff. But the greatest country on earth, I don't, that American bullshit. But, if you're going to say something like that, and you're going to be a right-wing person, and you're going to say the greatest country on earth, after Israel, right? Like, holy fuck. Where does that come from? And that's a person representing our country, right? Representing Trump. Like, holy fuck, right? That's an old clip that has resurfaced through the MAGA people who are pretty pissed off about it. So I don't know when it originally happened, but it did happen. She did say that.
We come on the air with an incredibly volatile, fast-moving situation unfolding right now in the Middle East. A few hours ago, Iranian missiles targeted a U.S. base in Qatar. It is home to 10,000
Qatar or Qatar? Is it Qatar? Are they Qatars over there, or is it Qatar?
U.S. military and civilian personnel. This video on your screen right now shows the moment when missiles were intercepted. Loud booms were heard in Qatar's capital. A defense official tells NBC News that there are currently no reports of casualties. Those strikes happened after the U.S. had warned American citizens in Qatar to shelter in place, anticipating such an attack. Now the region and thousands of U.S. service members deployed in the region are waiting for whatever else unfolds. An official telling NBC News that the Pentagon is aware.
Look at the amount of U.S. bases in the region. Now, there's a meme, I don't think I have it, but it talked about Iran being surrounded. Look, Iran is surrounded by military bases. These are all military bases around Iran. And, of course, Israel stuff. And so, I mean, how would you feel if America was there? You know, if Iran had bases like this around America and Cuba. I mean, remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so, I mean, look at this stuff. There's all these military... this is where, like, they would bring things in if they were going to go to war with Iran. Like, it's set up to go to war with Iran and, like, you know, to basically police this whole area. I mean, a lot of these countries don't have a big, you know, developed military, but the U.S. is here guarding its oil interests and, you know, having military presences in all these countries. And, like, you know, there's two right here. I'm not sure what country this is. I guess this is Qatar. Is that Qatar there? And so, you know, it's right there in the Gulf of Hormuz or whatever it's called. But, you know, like, holy shit.
Of imminent threats against bases across the Middle East, not just in Qatar. The big question right now is whether Iran will continue to retaliate against the U.S. and whether Iran's nuclear program is crippled but still viable after those Israeli and U.S. airstrikes. There is brand new reporting on just how we got here so quickly that raises even more questions on how Team Trump is going about handling delicate, fragile, important, and consequential decisions regarding U.S. foreign policy as this crisis unfolds in the Middle East. That new reporting in the New York Times reveals that Donald Trump was influenced, seemingly first and foremost, by Fox News, obsessed with looking like a winner in their coverage, and a Pentagon that scrambled to contain any possible damage to the operation that Donald Trump's narcissism could cause. As one official...
You know, it's totally believable. I mean, it's the story I've been saying, right? It's obvious that he wanted to look good, and he was jealous of Netanyahu getting all the credit for defeating Iran. And so, like, that's just a horrible reason to drop fucking bombs on a country. And the reason he's pissed at Israel is, you know, Trump's policies here are back the aggressor, back Russia, back Israel. I mean, particularly back Israel, and bomb the shit out of it. Let him, you know, bomb the shit out of the country until the losing country just you know, puts up their fucking belly in the Ukraine and in you know, Gaza Strip and the rest of it. And so, like, Trump is thinking that, all right, let's bomb the shit out of. If Israel's big problem is Iran's nuclear program, let's bomb the shit out of it because they want us to do that. And then we can cripple Iran and make them concede, make them cry uncle. And Israel will go along with it because we did what they asked. And Trump wants to be seen as a peacemaker because he did that in, you know, India and Pakistan. And he was claiming that none of these wars would have happened. The thing in Ukraine and with Russia wouldn't have happened if he was, he was the commander-in-chief. And so he wants to be seen. A lot of his thing is the whole loss to Biden. And he wants to show everyone how much better that he is than Biden in their little pathetic, childish fucking talking about their golf games. Remember, like I covered that recently, and you know, here, that ridiculous exchange. And so he is pissed at Israel because he's like, what, I gave you everything you wanted and you're still bombing the shit out of them? And like not knowing that they're the aggressor, it's like just silly.
Official tells the Times, quote, the president was the biggest threat to OPSEC. That means operational security that the planning faced. Wow. The New York Times also reports that the White House's statement that Trump would decide on whether to strike Iran, quote, within the next 2 weeks was always a ruse. It was never true. He'd already decided to launch a military operation when that statement was delivered by the sitting White House press secretary, whose salary is paid for by the American taxpayer from...
Oh, how dare she lie? I mean, she's the first press secretary to ever lie about bombing Iran or anything else.
...the podium. But that 2-week statement had the effect of, quote, cleaning up a mess, the telegraphing of the attack that was partly of the president's making, end quote. That mess was caused by Trump's unhinged and almost ceaseless social media posts. Everyone should evacuate Tehran, unconditional surrender in all caps, among others, according to the New York Times. Those posts, quote, generated angst at the Pentagon and U.S. Central Command, where military planners begin to worry that Trump was giving Iran too much warning about an impending strike. They built their own deception into the attack plan. A second group of B-2 bombers that would leave Missouri and head west over the Pacific Ocean in a way that flight trackers would be able to monitor on Saturday. That left the misimpression for many observers and presumably Iran about the timing and path of the attack, which would come from another direction entirely. That is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. New York Times Washington investigative reporter Mark Mazzetti's here. His byline is on that reporting we read from. Retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Mark.
Okay, so this seems all silly. It's like, there's stuff here that I didn't watch this before. The title was Nicole Wallace on Iran. Trump and his own VP seem to be on different pages about what, the whole thing. But this was, I thought, was about what just happened, because this was a day ago stuff. This was like the clusterfuck from a day ago, not today's clusterfuck. So Trump, look at how grumpy he is. Poor grumpy Trump.
I think it's been completely demolished. I think the reason we're here is because...
I think it's been completely demolished. You said it's obliterated. But, you don't know. No one fucking knows. So you just admitted you were bullshitting. I think it's been completely... Of course you do. You're going to say that because everything that you do is great. And you just never fail, except when you go bankrupt or get divorced or get caught cheating with a porn star or any number of fucking bullshit mistakes that you've made. Catastrophic mistakes you've made in your life.
Those pilots, those B-2 pilots did an unbelievable job. And, the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line.
They're hurting great pilots. No, what they were saying is the bombs might not work, or we don't know what's going on in the facility. And these were experts. And, we're not hurt.
Maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSDNC. They're all, and frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit. They're not after the pilots, they're after me. They want to try and demean.
They're not saying they missed. No one's saying they missed. They're not sure, what happened when the bombs hit. They don't know how much damage it is. They don't have access to the underground, and they don't know if Iran moved their uranium somewhere else, which is all legit. We don't know what happened. Nobody does. You lying sack of shit. This isn't about the pilots. Like trying to fucking put the pilots up in front of them. How dare you guys criticize our military and our great pilots? These fucking guys who drop bombs from thousands of feet in the air, right? On fucking innocent people often.
Iran will never rebuild its nuclear. From there? Absolutely not. That place is under rock. That place is demolished. The B-2 pilots did their job. They did it better than anybody could even imagine. They hit late in the evening. It was dark with no moon, and they hit that target.
Wait, there's no moon?
Every one of those things, and that place is gone.
He has no idea how bombing works. You think you need the fucking moon or the daylight to drop the fucking bomb? It's all done by computers and fucking navigation. You know how fast those fucking planes are going? And you're dropping a bomb. You think it's like a fucking jump shot or a guy's kicking a fucking field goal, you moron? He kicked a field goal at no fucking moon. It's completely automized because when they drop bombs, they don't know how far they are away from the target, the wind velocity, the momentum that the plane's going to carry the bomb in a certain direction, right? The bomb isn't going to go straight down. It's coming out, the plane's flying, whatever the way that they have to calculate. And so it's got to be 100% computerized. And, there wasn't even a moon. I mean, you can't calculate something like that. You're lucky if you get within missiles are one thing, but bombs are something completely different. You're dropping it down and expecting gravity to take it exactly where you wanted to take it, right?
But when I see CNN all night long, they're trying to say, well, maybe it wasn't really as demolished as we thought. It was demolished. You take a look at the pinpricks, and you see that place is gone. And I will say, I think CNN ought to apologize to the pilots of the B-2s. I think that MSDNC ought to apologize. I think these guys really, these networks and these cable networks are real losers. You really are. You're real losers. You're gutless losers. I say
gutless
that.
Losers. So I want to say gutless. Now I throw it in.
At the CNN, because I watch it. I have no choice. I got to watch that garbage. It's all garbage.
Yeah, tell me about it. Tell me about it, bro. You're preaching to the choir here. I got to watch that garbage too. And the garbage you put out, right? Garbage in, garbage out.
Group of people, and the people that run it, nobody even knows it's been sold so many times, but the people that run it ought to be ashamed. MSDNC, a guy named Brian Roberts, he heads it. He's a disgrace. He's a weak, pathetic disgrace.
He's a weak, pathetic disgrace, and he's a gutless loser. How dare anybody say that you fucking didn't do all the things you said you do, even though you have no way of seeing or verifying your claims. You piece of shit. I mean, just an absolute fucking joke. Like this guy, I mean, we knew he was a fucking moron during his first term. I mean, I knew this before he was on, he was a clown. He's funny. I mean, he was funny and he had, it was interesting to watch in some ways, right? But not in a way that you're laughing with him. Sometimes you're laughing with him, but mostly not. But the way he pissed everybody off, the way he disrespected the presidency, that was great. The way that MSNBC and CNN were fucking flabbergasted that this guy was the president, him tweeting in the middle of the night, that was wonderful during his first term. But now real shit's happening, and he's doing real shit. He's not being handled and controlled because he has his own team of people, of yes men around him. And he's just doing stupid shit that's going to run this country into the ground, which is ultimately God's plan anyway. So, I guess there's that. But he's just an absolute fucking bozo, right? Okay, so Fox News is covering this.
To meet with NATO leaders. Here's what he said right before he left. Watch.
I don't think so, but I'm not happy that Israel's going out now. There was one rocket that I guess were fired overboard. It was after the time limit. And
overboard? Where's overboard? Define overboard for us. What do you mean overboard? Over the country? Did it go over a ship? What do you mean overboard?
It missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. Ridiculous. How are you going to respond at the ceasefire? I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal.
They unloaded right after you made the deal?
Didn't have to unload.
Didn't have to unload.
And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either. All I do is play both sides. I'm going now, as you know, to NATO. Some of you are going with me, and I think it's going to be successful. We'll see. I'll let you know.
Are you going to be the agreement? If the new God in the Middle East sanctity, the agreement you managed to achieve, what are your future plans for the region, for Saudi Arabia, Israel, Gaza, be hostages?
Look, you're asking me about women in the Middle East. It's getting a lot better. Things are happening at a high level. As you know, Saudi Arabia has done a really good job. It's coming out far faster than I thought. So we're very happy.
Okay, so I don't know what he just.
That place is under rock. That place is demolished. The B-2 pilots did their job.
Okay, that's that part. We saw that.
A load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now...
This is the part that says the F-bomb, which the Fox News people are going to respond. We saw it already.
You have 12 hours. You don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel...
Because Iran did one missile that didn't hit anything? May not even have happened. And if Israel dropped their load twice?
...was going out this morning because the one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. Now, we basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Wow. And
we understand this. This is Fox News reacting to that.
yeah, too. A lot of people talking about the expletive at the end, but that's he just being honest.
He's furious.
Right.
I had the opportunity to just talk to him before we just went on air for the 8 o'clock hour, and I said, I haven't seen you this upset in a while. What's really going on? He had just hung up.
I haven't seen you upset in a while. What's really going on, bro? It's like a bro talk, right? Where you go to your friend, what's really going on? Or it's what your wife says to you, what's really going on with you, Donald? Right? Like, what are you really angry about?
With Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister, and he said that the prime minister is bringing all the planes back. I said, why are you so frustrated with Israel? And he says, because he didn't feel like it was good faith, that even though they still had some time until the ceasefire, that they essentially unloaded on Iran. I said, what about Iran as it relates to some of the reports that they're still doing their program? He says they got to save face for the country. They still got to appear to be strong. But he goes, their program is done. He said,
Wait, look at this right here. What the hell's happening to this guy?
On Iran. I said, what about Iran as it relates to some of the reports that they're still doing their program? He says they got to save face for the country. They still got to appear to be strong. But he goes, their program is done. He said, our pilots fixed all of that when they hit their targets there. But he goes, I'm not happy with both of them, but more so Israel, because he goes, it's over, it's done. The program is done.
Well, and he also said in that press conference that he's upset with Israel because Iran targeted them after the ceasefire, but it was one missile that went nowhere, he said. So for Israel to retaliate against that when nothing happened.
Yeah, we saw that shit. You need to explain to you dumbass fucking dumb fucks that watch you guys. Oh, if you didn't understand what Trump said, like, Jesus Christ, how can you not understand what he said? Right? Holy fuck. This is what we're dealing with, right? Holy fuck. And what I mean by holy fuck is that, building relationships and doing political policy and having peace agreements and, any kind of negotiation, any kind of social structure. Like, let's say you are in a relationship with your parents or your husband or your wife, and there's one person who has, let's just say it's a husband, has more power in the relationship for whatever reason. The husband has a very domineering personality. He might control the finances, whatever it is, right? And he just basically threatens his wife, makes her knuckle under and agree to something, and then says, we're cool now, right? And she says yes, but inside she's like, no. She's being browbeat or forced or bullied into agreeing with something. He's like, we're cool, right? I can sleep tonight, know that you're not going to try to cut my dick off, right? She's like, sure, yeah, I'm not going to do that. But deep inside she wants to. You have these relationships with your boss. We cool now? Your boss browbeats you and goes over the top and insults you and demeans you, and then you realize you can't lose your job. But you hate the guy, and it's based in leverage and based in force and bullying. And, in this case, also incompetence. And Trump's is trying to drop bombs and, his bunker busting love bombs love peace bombs, and can't understand why that didn't solve the problem. Now that Israel has what it wants, and Israel's never satisfied, and Iran's in a weakened position, but it's not going to, whatever's going to happen in the future, it's not going to be based in this is not a good deal. It's not a lasting peace where all parties are invested, right? The Sajmark system, the meditation, it's, wins you over by love, by the transmission, by God's love. And that, and it's not really even the system that wins you over, it's God. You end up wanting to serve God because, like, when you love something, you love somebody, you want to take care of them, you want to, do good for them, you want to make them happy, whatever it is, right? You want to please them, you want to, show your gratitude, right? With things that are best when you're done out of gratitude and out of a sense of, not being forced or bullied or, any of these things. Like, most of us are forced through various structures in our social system, our socioeconomic system. We're forced to take jobs we don't want. We're forced to do work we don't want. We're forced to participate in things we don't want. We're forced to comply with rules and social norms that we don't like, and we just knuckle under and do them because you have no choice. And the more oppressive your civilization, the more you can't be yourself, right? And it's always a complaint of people like all these liberals who felt like when they were conservatives were in power, they suppressed these tendencies that are coming out now. See what's happened. Like, that's a good example. When we had a conservative Christian culture and all the politics and all the media reflected that, and conservative right-wing Christians ruled, the social system and the political system and the economic system, there are lots of people that were liberal or people of color or gay people or all these people who felt like they were being diminished or something. They were being treated like second-class citizens, and they couldn't be who they felt they were, right? And so that's their point of view, that the oppressive nature of the religious social system and the powerful religious system that existed in America was suppressing who they wanted to be and who they felt they were. And look at the reaction. They've gone over the top the other way. To the extent that we saw the whole stuff with the weird, dudes playing sports with girls. Look how fucking far we've come. For those of you who have been around as long as I have, since the 80s, 90s, 70s, when this stuff was unthinkable, 50s and 60s even more so. The hippie revolution brought into some things. It was unthinkable to have these social and gender issues that came up, and to where you were being deplatformed and punished for not agreeing with somebody else's the internal conflict they were having about their physical sexual identity and what they claimed to be inside, right? And if you didn't agree with that, if you didn't, in your belief system, you didn't believe what they said they were claiming. Someone claimed to be a dragon, and they said to you, if you pretend they're not a dragon, you're the one who's going to be punished, right? Like, it was madness. But that's all out of reaction to the forced suppression that was there before. You can't suppress things, and religions always try to do that. They talk about sin all the time, and it's why oftentimes, the biggest sinners, the biggest adulterers, the biggest, whatever it is, these pastors and people like this that are preaching fire and brimstone, and they're the ones that are always the worst ones, right? They're always the ones that are engaging in the worst behaviors. And so you get the idea. So when you construct really stupid deals based on the guy in power being a complete fucking boob and moron in Trump, and then all these other aspects of that we see unfolding here, then of course it's going to be doomed to failure. Like, holy shit, how can it not fail? Like, how can this not? Even if there is some kind of anything that Trump constructs now, number one, when he's not in power, the Democrats are going to undermine it and get rid of it. And so as soon as there's a Democratic president, or the midterms, when the Democrats take power in the legislature again, they start appointing Supreme Court judges. As the judges die off, there's some old ones, and you get a more balanced, or you get the Democrats controlling the Supreme Court, and then all these other countries, then they reverse the tariffs and all this other bullshit that Trump did, and then these other things, these other accords and agreements will fall apart. because it was only Trump's bullying that made them happen. And so he's trying to bully Israel now with the money, and maybe, I don't know if he's trying to bully them because Israel owns him, so there's all that, there's that social dynamic. But I guess Netanyahu pulled his planes back because Trump got fucking pissed at him, right? But how long before they find a way or do some false flag thing and start the thing up again and then drag America in with them? I mean, there's no good outcome to any of these things because they're so sloppy and they're done without, like, if you do something with the idea that you're serving God, and it's not like some false idea, it's not a bullshit thing, that you're actually serving God. Not the idea you're serving God, but you find out what God wants you to do in a real way, not some egotistical voice that tells you something that you interpret as God, but like a real, when you have clarity and you do things in service or even service of other people, like selflessness and objectivity, and you're truthful, then you do real work, you do quality work, you do masterly work, and those things are built to last, right? But they don't last forever, which we've seen. So even those things. But certainly something that Trump built is everything that he's doing is just so sloppy. It's maybe there's short-term success where he can claim success and get all boastful, but in reality he's building a fucking card house of disaster, right? That's just going to implode all around us. It's just going to, the whole thing, the bunker buster bombs of love and peace, right? Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.